Good
Crazy.
morning. It is, hey, Brendan Martin, executive producer extraordinaire, Houdini.
Got into the sauce.
yeah.
It was a rough weekend in Knoxville.
Well, that was.
The
And
boys
look,
took a rough one.
hey, I'm going to ask the most obvious question. Y'all having any technical internet problems in the state of Florida, seeing that you've had two major hurricanes in the last couple of weeks? I can't imagine what it's like. Unbelievable to pull
Did you
this
see
off.
the size of that chicken?
Yeah, it's a big one. Hey, we got Coach Ellis Johnson checking in from over in South Carolina. Going to break down the weekend's games. Dave Tompkins in the Low Country in Beaufort,
love college
South
football.
Carolina.
I love college football.
I'm ready for it. And then we got Ron Higgins from the Shreveport Bossier Journal checking in. LSU Ole Miss game here. And Ken Capps will check in again from out in Dallas. Talk about that Texas OU Red River beatdown. That was rough. I hate it. 34-3, Texas beats Oklahoma, and where they go from here. And he'll preview the Georgia at Texas game this weekend. Hey, smash the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Allow notifications on your Android and iPhone. Get pen and paper handy because Coach Johnson is going to give you a lot to write about because he's one of the smartest people we've had on this show. I get so many compliments on the man from Winsboro, South Carolina. Love having him on here. And, Coach, listen, Dave Tompkins will be on here with us. He's over in Beaufort. Let's talk about what you saw over the weekend. And, it gets kind of crazy down on the sidelines, up in the press box. By the way, I've never asked you this. Do you like being up in the box or do you like being down on the field when you're coaching in a game as a defensive coordinator? I know as a head coach you don't have a choice, but as a coordinator.
I need to have black
I really liked better, especially later in my career, being in the box.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I would decide, depending on who else was on the staff. Some guys can handle the sideline and some can't.
Yeah.
And some guys can give you good information from up top and some can't. So it wasn't just my preference. It was what everybody's strengths and weaknesses were. But the last several years, I was in the box.
Yeah, and you lived – I know my friend Thompson Westerberg, a young man that went to Auburn, he was up there 08, 9, 10, 11 as a manager, and he would do coach comm between Curtis Looper and Philip Lolly. And I love Coach Lolly, if you know him. He's what you call old school, isn't he? Hey, I hope you're doing well this morning. And by the way, you've told us some great ways to help the people that were hit by that hurricane. Frank Duffy, who's on our show, was volunteer with the Cajun Navy. He said a week ago Friday, they were up in East Tennessee at an airport, and 6 airplanes of the Cajun Navy came up with supplies, and he saw 6 helicopters coming across the horizon, Huey Cobras. It was Samaritan's Purse. He said the effort by the people up there, and then another group of horse people from Kentucky came down there. But thank you for giving us ways to help the people up there, and anything you can say, do it. So Dave Tompkins and I and everybody in the free world is ready to hear your thoughts about all these games over the weekend because the TV people have got to be doing backflips with the kind of numbers they're pulling from these games.
Well, they better be pulling because they got to pay a lot of money to these schools. But I missed the best weekend was last weekend. I guess you'd call it my open date where I couldn't come on. But it was still a pretty good week. You've already mentioned Texas, Oklahoma. Oklahoma's still growing. They're not a really complete football team, but Texas just keeps getting better and better. There's not many teams in America that can lose their starting quarterback for 2 or 3 games and not miss a beat. And even a guy was a Heisman possibility, and they lose him for 3 weeks, and they have not slowed down. And now they've got him back. Georgia had a relatively tough game, but Mississippi State played a little better, but they didn't have a problem beating them. I thought the Alabama-South Carolina game has told us a lot about Alabama. They're not a mature, consistent football team right now. And it didn't start against Vandy. It started in the second half against Georgia. And they're not doing things consistently as a football team. They're making terrible mistakes. Their defense is kind of a drive-by, hot and cold. And their offense right now, Milroe turned the ball over, I think, 3 times, 2 picks, 1 fumble, and then got a safety with a grounding. That wasn't totally his fault. But they're not playing anywhere close to what everybody thought they were. And Florida, Tennessee, Florida had their shot to get one. They outplayed them in almost every little statistic, and it wasn't lopsided, but they beat them almost every way, but
Yeah.
they couldn't close it out. Because LSU Ole Miss, that was a great game.
God.
That did not surprise me. I don't
Yeah.
consider that one an upset. Ole Miss has not been in gear offensively for 3 weeks. Missouri had a mass. And Vandy, Vandy beat Kentucky playing football. You know, they kind of got beat statistically or edged out a little bit statistically, but Kentucky had a lot of penalties and it turned the ball over.
Coach, watching the games like you do, it's like taking a bomb sniffing dog into McDonald's. They smell the salt, the cooking oil, everything. You look at games completely differently than we do. Um, my question, Nico Iamaleava, this is the third week in a row he's faced SEC defenses. And allegedly, he's an $8 million man with his NIL. And he's 6'6", 215, throws early in the season. He looked really good. As a coach, what do you want to be telling him about, Heupel's record now when he scores 30 points or less is 2-13, and two of those 15 games have been the last 3 weeks at Oklahoma, 25-15. I was last week in Fayetteville to watch them lose 19-14 to Arkansas. And Travis Williams, I was really impressed with that game. I'm a big Travis Williams guy. I'll be biased. I admit it. He's an Auburn guy from Columbia, South Carolina. But what about Nico and his struggles, I guess, or what is it? It's just the SEC is just that good?
Rob, I'm glad you brought this up because it's something I've been noticing for 3 weeks, and I don't know. And you say I'm a bomb sniffing dog, but there's so many bombs on the TV at the same time. I flipping the thing around the other night.
I didn't mean you're a dog, but
Well,
you
the
got
other
a
night,
brain like a computer.
yeah, but the other night there were 4 games on, kind of in that late time period. LSU, Ole Miss, and Tennessee game was on, and what was it, Oregon, Ohio State? There was a fourth one
Yes.
on,
Oh my
and I've
God.
got this split screen, with YouTube TV, and I can see all four, but I can't keep up with it all. And
Was
then
it
you know how it is.
The Colorado game, I think.
If you try
Yeah.
to pull the thing up and flip around and go to this one and go back to that one, you always miss the right plays. So it is getting harder to watch it because there's
Yeah.
so many good games on. There's a conflict with each other. They got a problem, and I don't know. I'm not saying it's a terrible situation, but obviously they're not playing good offense. Their offense is not in gear right now, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
I know that system depends on hitting the deep ball. That's how he stretches
Yeah.
the running game. That's how he gets you out of the box, and they just have not been able to hit the high percentage on it. I guess Kenny did a good job of them in Arkansas. Just I think he played it too high a lot,
Yeah.
and it made him throw the ball underneath. Made him try to run the ball. But what's enabling people to do that? I mean, what's enabling Tennessee to still get some wins? Their defense is for real. And
Yeah.
I'll jump ahead to next week. We've talked about Alabama and Tennessee a little bit, but I really think Tennessee will win this ball game.
Wow. Dave Tompkins, Mountain Brook native, Alabama fan, coach, West Point graduate, Stanford MBA. He's all over the place. Come on in here, Dave.
Well, I have to agree with Ellis on the Alabama Tennessee game. As much as I would like to disagree with him, I think it's an elimination game for either team. I think the team that loses is not going to make the playoff. I'm going to plug my Black Knights of Army. If either Army or Navy wins out, and if Boise State wins out, I think those two teams, the win out Army, the win out Navy, because they've both beaten Notre Dame and Boise State, I think they both belong in the playoff. That's just, that's probably the biased, emotional fan of Army that I am. I'm so proud of the way they're playing this year. It's just, we're really seeing in the SEC what just a super hyper competitive conference it is, albeit we'll see what happens this weekend in Austin, albeit with one team that's kind of separated itself from the pack, that being Texas, with a dominant offense and an even more dominant defense. But I've got a feeling Georgia's going to show up and play well. I think they're going to play their best game of the season in Austin, but I don't know if it's going to be enough.
Coach, good question here from Blind Squirrel Sports. He's a big Georgia fan. Will Kalen DeBoer and Kirby Smart be able to get their teams to play more disciplined football throughout the rest of the season? Here it is going into week 8. You've been there so many times. Kind of talk about that.
Well, there's no question Alabama's having problems with it because it's a lot of stuff going on between snaps and lack of focus. And as I said, it didn't start against Vanderbilt. It started earlier.
Yeah.
And just little things that a really championship team should not be doing on a regular basis, they're doing. Now, Georgia, I don't consider them nearly as much. Now, the penalties have maybe been a little bit of a bugaboo for them, and they've had some turnovers, but I don't think it's been constant
Yeah.
like it has been with Alabama. They just seem to be a little more disciplined. Tough. I don't think they have the dynamic skill, dangerous people that Alabama has right now. But overall, they're a better football team, and I think they just got off to a terrible start when Alabama beat them. By the way, I've got to agree with Dave. I went to West Point one year, and I've got two older brothers that both played football at Army back when they played when they were playing
God,
Penn State and all those guys. So,
that's
uh,
awesome.
yeah, my oldest was in the same class with Staubach. They beat Staubach his senior year. And then the next one came along 3 years later. But I'm an Army fan too, man.
I
Dave, what
love it.
class
I
did
think
you
it's our best
graduate?
team. I graduated in 1985. My senior
You're a
year,
young man.
we were good. We beat Michigan State in a bowl game, won the Commander in Chief's trophy, tied Tennessee in Neyland Stadium, a game we really should have won. But I think this is the best Army team since 1958 when Pete Dawkins won the Heisman Trophy. Red Blake's last year as coach up there. We'll see, and they haven't really been tested yet. They'll get tested against Air Force, even though Air Force isn't any good, just because it's a rivalry game. Then they got to play Notre Dame in Yankee Stadium. So they got some tough games coming up. But I'm proud of them, and they're playing well on both sides of the ball. They've caused 14 turnovers, 1 turnover. I think they've punted the ball like 3 times all year. I mean, they're just really, really playing as good as a Service Academy team can play.
Yeah, they really are. And, Monken's a good friend. He was at Georgia Southern when I was at Citadel. And he does a great job.
I love it.
The Army line, you'll never find a terror in the fray when the team is fighting for that black and gray and gold. We're always here with song and cheer, and this is the tale we're told. The Army team.
I love it.
Let's go back to the SEC now. Yes, Jeff Monken is fantastic. They got a great offensive coordinator in Cody Worley from Kennesaw State, of all places. And then Nate Woody is a tremendous defensive coordinator. He does his coordination on the sidelines versus up in the box.
Yeah, Nate's a good, not close friend, but I know Nate very well. I was a head coach at Spartanburg High School. Nate was playing for Walford. And
Yeah.
we used to play on their football team. We played in their stadium. And I would go over on Saturdays and help Coach Sass's staff in the press box. Nate was playing, man. He's a tough guy. He's a really good football coach.
Coach, Dad being an architect and traveling all over the country and the world doing a lot of athletic facilities over the years, I was the only kid in 6th grade who had a Wofford Terriers hoodie sweatshirt. He was doing a bunch of work up in Spartanburg. So I know my sister lives up in Roanoke, and her husband played football at Virginia Tech. That area, I love that area of the country. And I think it's, to me, that what Army's doing and Navy's doing, it is a lot of fun to watch. But I want to ask you something real quick. I've been on the sidelines just in a media role, but not as a coach. Everybody's looking at what happened with Kirby Smart. I know some people that know him and his wife very well. It gets really excited down there. What was your takeaway from what everybody's talking about in 30 seconds or less when Kirby ran into I think he was going after the official, and it gets kind of crazy on the sidelines, but kind of give us your thoughts.
I tell you again, I'm trying to watch all these games, and I didn't
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah.
And the recount on it, I mean, I don't really know. It was almost confusing to me to try to read the recount about it. I don't know
Yeah.
what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, there's so much happening down there. I remember one time working for ESPN in college, 1987, the Georgia Tech game. And if women, children, and orphans could have heard some of the things said on the sidelines by the coaches, holy, the decorum, as Niedermeyer said in Animal House, language so crude and actions so lewd, the decorum prohibits my listing them. Like, Coach
had a Roman toga party.
Yes, a Roman toga party.
Believe me, it gets worse in the press box, and a lot of times your box is plexiglass adjoined, separated from the radio broadcast. And, 2 or 3 days later, some of the guys will say, "Yeah, I heard you on radio the other day."
Yeah, saying, praise the Lord. Yes, sir.
Coach, I'm sure you'll attest to this. There's no hotter place or probably anywhere than the TV truck for the broadcast for the host. The director is like, Monday Night Football is like, I think if you recorded the director, I don't think you could rebroadcast it anywhere. That's why we've never seen the inside of a TV truck, because you can't show it. There's too much. It's lewd, nudity, drugs, alcohol. You can't show any of it.
It gets insane.
I got a quick. Can I ask a quick trivia?
Today, and that's Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, go ahead, Coach.
I got a quick trivia question. I got to ask, and Dave's on here. Do you guys know the very TV broadcast replay was used?
The very first broadcast?
Yeah.
Time instant replay was ever done. It was Army.
I believe it was an Army-Navy game.
It was Army-Navy game. It was 19. Well, it was early 60s, 1962. It would be 1963. Excuse me. Staubach was having a great year, probably on the way to a Heisman or whatever. And so they had it set up, and the plan was to get Staubach on one of his fantastic plays and try to replay it. And of course, it was a crude technicality back then. It was very difficult. But anyhow, during the course of the game, they weren't doing much. So they said, we got to get something soon. And they got Raleigh Stitchway, quarterback from Army, on an end run that he scored in the left corner of the end zone. And that was the very first instant replay that was ever put on TV.
No,
61 years ago.
63. I think Lindsey Nelson was calling it.
63.
Was Lindsey Nelson, Coach? Remember, Lindsey Nelson, Notre Dame at the 42-yard line. Here's a pitch out from Fitzgerald to O'Reilly, back to O'Malley. I mean, he taught history.
What?
He taught history at Tennessee when my friends were in school there. And they said he was a professor. They said he taught a class, and they said it was pretty cool. Lindsey Nelson, Notre Dame at the Lindsey Nelson's voice, Kurt Gowdy and Charlie Jones are legendary sports guys. Coach,
did they have anything to do with replay? Coach, wait, hold on. Time out, Coach. So I did slow motion replay for like 10 years, like at the highest level. Like I did that job for real, for a long time. So I know slow motion replay. So I had never heard that story. And all the years I've NFL, NBA, NHL, I have replayed them all. And I have never heard that story. So that's crazy. So why did it how did you know, like, how did it get set? Was it just filler? Because they're like, there's too much time between,
Well, they were trying to get it perfected or whatever. They'd never tried it before. And they made a decision. Let's try to get Roger Staubach in the Army-Navy game. I mean, what was bigger back then?
Nothing at all.
Yeah.
Ever. And it shouldn't have been.
But and it was very crude. I mean, it was just, not very high quality as you can imagine. But I did not know it, and I remember sitting there watching the game in my house, with my family. My brother was on that team, and so I'm watching the game when it happens. Of course, we didn't halfway know what they were doing, but they replayed a play, and they'd replay them at halftime. They'd replay them after the games.
Went.
Yeah.
I want to say Navy won that game 21-17.
That was the one.
3 months old when that happened.
That was the one where Army was about to score down on the goal line, and Stitchway
Yep.
kept asking for silence. And about the second time or third time he turned around and asked for silence, the referee said play, and they couldn't hear. And I think the clock ran out. They were on like the 1 yard line.
It ran out. Yep. It's we lost to Notre Dame in 1995 or 96, almost the same way in the Meadowlands. So hopefully that history won't repeat itself in Yankee Stadium.
You know what's cool, Coach, is and everybody, we all remember Monday Night Football. Don Altmeyer, the producer, took the cameras that were up in the box. Don Olmeyer down on the field and started shooting shots up to the crowd and of the cheerleaders, and that really shot ratings up. And but nobody had thought to do that before. Brendan, how many cameras typically are at a game? How many? Let's say at the Texas OU game, say the national championship. How many cameras in today's world would be there?
You're putting me on the spot, but
80?
I would say no. I used to do the EVS position, which was I used to run the tape rooms and stuff, and so like you're replaying and editing. So I had an extra job of editing the tape. Excuse me, not tape.
Yeah,
digital, like giant TiVo machines. You got a game camera, so you got a low end zone camera. So there's, you have to see it's like low bucket end zone camera. So then you got a high end zone camera. Then you're gonna have a high 50. Then you're gonna have a high right, high left. So we're at 5 or 6 now. You're gonna have a handheld on the sidelines, probably a breakaways handheld on the other sidelines. So that's 2. So there we're at 7. Then you're gonna have some sort of like a POV cam, like 1 or 2 helmet, like pylon cam. And then you're going to have a hallway cam. It's like a drop cam, some sort of an interview camera. It's like on the way going into break, whatever. That'll be a breakaway. So we're about 12 now. So and then your Monday night football, so you're just going to spend a whole boatload of extra money that you don't need. So you're going to probably have 4 or 5 more extra cameras in there that you won't even use. So then and then if you have a studio, I'm just saying on site, so if you have a pregame studio cams, you got to add 3 or 4 more cameras. And I'm not done, because then you got to have a camera in the booth, and then then you got to have a camera probably on the side, like another camera drop on the sidelines if you're doing a roving reporter.
Well, it's just, Coach.
And then like now you got to have a drone camera.
Yeah, you got drones
and a hallway camera and a VOM camera. So now we're at 20.
Yeah, so that I would think it's amazing. And Coach, in the last few questions before you go, looking at it, I want to ask your thoughts about what happened with Florida at Tennessee. And obviously Brendan and his father are Gator Bait Media, but what do you think is going on? Florida, they're not a horrible team, but how would you take that as a coach? The end of it.
I don't know. I mean, I personally, I don't think they're quite as good as Tennessee. I think they played extremely well, on a hostile field, but they couldn't close it out. I know that's what you're talking about, but they just don't quite have the playmakers that I think they need, and it's hard to put your finger on it. I mean, like I said, they edged them in just about every little statistic. You say, well, gosh, Florida has a chance to win this thing. Well, they did. They took them into overtime, but it just couldn't close it out. And I don't know. I don't know if it's too many changing from year to year, and play calling and schemes, coaching staff, and so forth. They just don't look like they're totally, sure what they're going to do every time they snap the ball.
And Coach, with all the portal and guys coming and going, and about player development, how critical that is. But if you're bringing in 25 or 30 new guys every year, in the case of Dion at Colorado, it could be 60 or 70 new guys. How hard is it you have to get to know your players. You've been the defensive coordinator and developed a lot of really good players over the years. They don't all come in ready like Carl Lawson out of Alpharetta, Georgia, Milton High School. Did you remember Carl's dad when he played football? Did he play at Georgia Tech?
Yeah, in fact, I was home visit recruiting him, and I asked his dad. I said, "You the one who played fullback for Coach Ross at Georgia Tech?" And he grinned, and we had the same head coach. I said, "Well, I played for him too, but I played for him at the Citadel when he was in his 30s."
Wow.
And Carl played for him. That was the team, I think, that tied for the national championship.
It was,
But
yeah.
yeah, but I enjoyed. It was fun recruiting because I had to be careful because Carl would be sitting over there getting bored listening to us sit there and shoot a fat over about our great time with Coach Ross.
God.
But
Well,
but co- but, co-
yeah,
but coach, but is Billy? I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. I mean, Billy's done. I mean, like, this coach is done for at this program. Don't you agree? I mean, it's just.
It's
Yeah, I don't know. I see it on his face at the sideline at the end of the game. It's just like I can't win here.
Well, I think that's a misinterpretation, but I understand why you would say that. I've known the kid since he played at Furman. When I was the head coach at Citadel, he was playing his senior year
yeah,
at Furman. I've known him since he, 21 years old, and never worked with him, but been around him several times as an opponent or on the road recruiting. He's that's sort of his demeanor. I'm just telling you. I mean, whether he's whatever he's doing, good or bad, or successfully or unsuccessfully, you won't see a whole lot of emotion on his face. It's just kind of his personality. I don't understand why they haven't made strides and steps forward. It's just been puzzling to me. I know he knows how to recruit, and I know he knows how to coach. I don't know if he put together a group that didn't gel when he first got in there. The key to one of these things, because the program was not in good shape when he walked in the door. They had a lot of good players. They'd won some ball games, but the word is the locker room was a horror show, and there was a lot of just disjointed players and so forth. And it's one thing that got Dan. And so I don't. I guess I don't know. One of the biggest things when you first come in is you got to get the right guys on your staff so that it gets off to a better start. Especially today, you don't get 4 or 5 years to fix it. You got to get it going immediately.
Well,
yeah,
coach, I just want to press you on that. It's like, well, I mean, I know it was bad, but I mean, horror show is bad. I mean, that's that. I mean,
yeah,
I look. I know when you got one player going into the NFL, that's bad,
yeah.
and from the SEC. So I know
Right.
I know it's bad. I know the cover's dry. But can you just for a second, as a coach, talk about in the SEC how difficult a task? And I'm not trying to be a Billy Napier, I don't know. I don't even know how to say it anymore. I guess I'm not trying to come to his aid right now because the whole world's wanting him to, head out. But I'm just curious as a coach how hard that is when you really have nothing and you really can't go to out into in front of the podium to Gator Nation and say, "Hey, I'm Billy Napier. We have nothing." Like, really? No, I know I can't say that, but that's like we get nothing. That's saying like I got a divorce and my ex-wife's crazy. It's like, well, everyone's ex-wife's crazy, dude. It's
Yeah.
like,
I mean, I want to see him succeed because
Yeah.
I've known him for a long time. But looking at it from any objective measure, I mean, I don't know what you do. I don't want to see him lose his job, but
Yeah.
I couldn't sit here and give you factual reasons why they shouldn't make a change. And I'll
Yeah.
say this, and I know I'm probably stepping on toes, and I'm kind of partial to the man, but there have been 2 times at the University of Florida where they've had a good extended period of really good success. And that was Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer. And I just heard Cam Newton on a podcast yesterday, and he's talking about what a mess that locker room was about the time Urban was in there. Talking about Tebow and the Pouncey brothers and his ordeal, Cam's ordeal. And I mean, that thing was about a keg of dynamite about to blow up. And eventually it
sour
just,
grapes.
well, eventually it all went sour. Okay.
I
Yeah.
got a new
But what
laptop
I'm
for you,
saying, I
dude.
understand
Yeah.
you're a Florida fan, but I'd like for you to tell me in history, and they've had some great coaches, but throughout history, anybody that's done it for an extended period of time. And I
Yeah.
think Steve Spurrier is that damn good because I worked for him and we did it at South Carolina for a while. I, but you
What
got
made
to,
him so, coach? Why is he? Because I know, I mean, obviously know a lot about Spurrier, but
Yeah.
why is
That's a
he so
great.
good?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
well,
And
from
I
my
know we're
stand,
expanding him. We got Ron Higgins. I'm just going to bring him in. Coach, tell us
Okay.
why Steve Spurrier. What made him so great? Hi, Ron. We're just
Hi,
asking Coach this
how
question.
are you? Go ahead.
well, he, in my, and I'm looking at it from a standpoint trying to coach against him and then trying and working for him. Uh, and I knew he was good on offense because I was having a hard time trying to stop him. But when I got there, I realized that a lot of it was the genius, and the genius was the simplicity. And he could do something. I mean, he could sit down and watch film that I would sit there with a pencil and piece of paper and have to run the play back 6 times and go to the next play and run it back 6 times. He watched film like he was watching a TV show. I mean, he didn't hardly ever run the thing back. And I'm thinking, is he just killing time? It
Yeah.
was just, he didn't have to. And he knew what coverage he was going to get against certain formations. He knew if he could move one player across the line, across the football pre-snap, he could look at 2 or 3 guys over there, and he could tell you what you're getting ready to play. And he could get to play to the kids and everything. Now, that's just the offensive part. Running a staff, everybody talked about he wasn't very organized, and he was, he didn't work hard and all that. It was BS. He just did not. He didn't sit there and grind the clock in the office like some of these guys do to claim they work harder and outwork other people. And a lot of us, they're just killing time. And everything he did was productive. But he's good, and he's an excellent recruiter, 1-on-1 in the home. There are so many things that I could say, but I just tell you, you could take average players and play well with them. And you could finally get those great players that fit what he did, and you're not going to be able to stop him.
Yeah, coach, that is a really neat perspective.
And go back, and also you go back and follow his programs. And there are minimal examples of bad apples hanging around that program.
Yeah.
One reason is he didn't put up with it. And he didn't have to sit there and talk in front of the microphone for 5 minutes about how tough we're going to be on them and we're going to do this and they're not going to do that. He one time said, I don't want a bunch of rules in your playbooks or in your manual. He said, if you put something in there, you got to back it up. So, but he just didn't. He didn't bring them into the program. If he knew for a fact it was going to be a problem, he didn't fool with them. I don't care how good they were. And if you go back and check it now, he didn't have a bunch of that. Yeah, everybody has it every now and again, but he didn't have a bunch of that.
Yeah,
I know. Coach, at Florida, he taught football. It was a football class when he's there. There was like football 101. It was a class on football. Like he taught a class on it, like just on strategy and all that. I just love this stuff, and I hate to eat it all up because we got such great guests. Everyone backing up. I'm going to back out and say thank you to Coach and tell you we have a traffic jam, Rob Brown, in your green room.
I know.
And it's getting messy. And I didn't buy enough snacks from Costco.
That's
We're totally screwed, dude.
Well, Coach,
and it's
look,
on you because you didn't get me any of it. So you
I know
didn't
we
pay
don't
for
have
the snacks this week.
Who was supposed to bring the drinks? But Coach, I got to tell you,
quartermaster, and you screwed it up. Good job.
All right, Coach, that was a cool perspective, insight having coached with Steve Spurrier. Because I've always been a fan of his, even though I'm an Auburn grad. He's at Florida or South Carolina, just because I have so much respect for him for what he does, just the way he does it, and people that actually know him, like you. Wow, I cannot thank you enough, man, and look forward always. I know last week you had the repair guy coming, but I'm a YouTube streamer, by the way. There's nothing better. And Ron Higgins, you probably would agree. But, Coach, thank you so much. And how can people follow you? Because if you're putting out content, because this is such a treat. And my phone is just blowing up. People just love having you come on here because you tell it like it is. And, you take whatever questions that we have. And cannot thank you enough.
Well, they can't follow me unless they get in the car and catch me riding down the road. I have no Facebook, no Twitter, and I've got Instagram because my kids made me get it, and I need to stay off of it. If I ever ran for political office, I'd last about 24 hours. They'd have more crap on me.
Coach, I got to tell you something. I got to be serious. I got to be honest with you right now. And screw all the rest of these guys on right now. You have great hair. Okay, fantastic hair. Therefore, you could win any political office you want. And as a complete marketing genius that I am, look what I'm doing with Rob Brown. Have you seen his hair? It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm starting to agree with you. I'll tell you what, some of these guys that are elected, I'm starting to think there's nothing underneath that hair. I don't know what to.
Coach, I'm 136 years old. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, Coach, look, man, I hope everything's going well. Dabo, Clemson, they're doing better, but we'll look forward to having you back on next week. And thank you so much for sharing your Monday morning with us. It means a lot to us.
Sounds great. Enjoyed it, guys.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you,
sir.
sir. Ron Higgins.
That's the last
Shreve-
time he'll be on with us, probably.
Well, I hope you'll come back on.
I blame you. It's all your fault. You talk too much. I'm out.
No, hey, Ron Higgins, Shreveport Bossier Journal. You were at that game Saturday night, I guess, at Death Valley. What was your takeaway? LSU wins. They did not have the lead the entire game until they won the game. And where do they go from here? And what does Lane Kiffin do now at 1-2 in the SEC with the best roster they say they've ever had? Kind of break it down for us.
Well, first of all,
What does he do?
man, I love the answer on the social media answer from Ellis Johnson. How you follow me? You follow me down the road. That's wonderful. God, I love that. That's just like for old school people like me. It's like you like
go jump in a lake.
That's perfect. Yeah. How do I follow down the road?
I don't know. Can of corn.
Oh my God, it's great. LSU just never gave up. They just didn't give up. It was probably one of their best. It's probably their best defensive game they've played under Brian Kelly since he's been here. Finally played the way. They got a new coordinator in Blake Baker and played the style he wanted, which is a lot of different blitzes, a lot of different looks. Not hardly any coverage bust. No major big plays or bust. They had like 6 sacks, 9 TFLs, 12 pass breakups. They created turnovers. They just kept coming. LSU just never, and they just never quit. Nussmeier threw more incompletions than any of the LSU quarterback in one game. He had 29 incompletions. He had 52 passes. But this example on their touchdown drive to tie the game, I think he was like 3 of 8, something like that. It was under 50%, and 2 of them were fourth down plays to keep drives alive. One was a game-winning touchdown, and another one was a third down play converted. It's 4 completions, 4 out of 9, and all 4 were for first downs. One was for a touchdown. Just clutch. I mean, they just refused to lose. You start to wonder how good Ole Miss is, because when you look at their stats in non-conference play to conference play, it's pretty obvious they played nobody in non-conference play.
Yeah.
Nobody. I mean, they average almost 20 less points in SEC play. They average 146 yards less total offense. Give up almost 70 yards more. I think they weren't prepared for SEC play. Now listen, look, it's the best money defense can buy. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I was skeptical that LSU could beat them. This for the reason was that LSU decided to improve their defense last year by going out and buying a new coaching staff. And the progress has been incremental, but slow, but it's bit by bit. Ole Miss went out and bought a new defense, players. And a lot of times you buy better players, you win games. And their defense has been good, the defensive line. But their defensive line didn't sack Nussmeier one time. The pass protection was great. Nussmeier moved. It was a classic LSU Ole Miss game, which means that anything can happen. And I've seen so many things happen in that game. Watching it now for over 60 years, and I've never seen a game end where the starting quarterback, the last 2 passes he throws in the game are touchdowns. After just fighting through stuff the whole game.
You never watched Tim Tebow play?
Yeah. Well, I watched.
That was his whole game plan.
Yeah. but Tebow can also run. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like I gotta create the
but
problem
this
so
way,
I can solve
Yeah,
it.
but they've been begging Nussmeier to run. He finally busted loose from like a 3rd and 13. He busted loose for a 14-yard game, got a first down. Everybody's like, why don't you run more? And there's a lot of cases he does need to run. But look, it's still not. I mean, it's still a hard road for LSU. They got to go to at Arkansas this week. They got to go.
Yeah.
They win. I'm an LSU fan this year because the Gators, well, they suck. And again, and Billy Napier is just it's a mess. It's like watching Groundhog's Day. I can't even.
But it is.
It's just-
Dave Tompkins, you heard what Ryan just
and I
said.
will grumble because I am the executive producer of this this hoe. Listen to me. I'm the executive producer of this hoe. Damn it. Sorry, Dave, your mic's down because you would like to be squeaky in the background. I
What?
gotta deal with it.
Is
You got
Dave,
a
you
squeaky
there?
chair. Dave, do you have like an antiquities chair? Is your chair like old school?
I'll stop rocking in it.
No,
I'll
I
stay
want to see
motionless.
it. I want to see. Stand up, Dave. Can I see the chair? It's probably 4 million years old.
No, it's
It's the kind of chair that you don't give a shit if it squeaks. Huh? Yeah,
It
it's
squeaks
dual
a little
lever.
bit.
I don't
Keeps
even,
me
hey,
awake.
Dave, I don't even know what that means, Dave.
It's an
I don't-
antiquity.
my-
It's an executive
My
chair.
shoes are like 5 years old, dual leather. What does that mean?
Dave,
Patent leather.
Dave, I want to ask you about what Ron just said with the Ole Miss LSU
Mhm.
game. Ole Miss went out and got that defense. And I said going into the game last weekend, I said, it looks like Lane Kiffin's portal ideology, Dave, is on trial of trying to do it this way. And he's got to do something. His record against teams that finish with 9 or more wins is 3-20, Dave. Your takeaway from that.
Hold on, Dave. Hold on, Dave. Lane Kiffin is like the original, like Billy Napier. I feel like he's like the original version of Billy.
Well, I think Ole Miss is the biggest question mark this year in the SEC, but it's an SEC year with a ton of question marks. You know, with the sort of the stakes raised because of the extreme competition. I mean, big questions for Ole Miss, big questions for Alabama, big questions for Tennessee now, and then kind of upside questions. So sort of flip it a little bit, upside questions for LSU, upside questions for Vanderbilt, and I think even upside questions for Arkansas. It's just obviously Texas is the best team, and I think Georgia will turn out to be the second best team. But then your next sort of 6 teams, there's just real big questions and sort of who's trending up and who's trending down. And Ole Miss, to your point, Lane can't win big games in conference, despite whatever he does with the transfer portal and NIL. You know, same issue that Ryan Day has at Ohio State. He can't win in a hostile environment, or he hasn't proven he can yet. And we haven't talked about that yet because it's Big Ten, not SEC. But I completely agree with Ron on the LSU game. I mean, throughout that entire game, even though they were, one missed pass after another and behind the entire time, you just had this feeling they're going to win. They just seemed more sort of in control of their destiny than Ole Miss did.
Ron, I think Ole Miss has won 18 times in Baton Rouge, which is more than anybody with the exception of Alabama. But, your takeaways, Brian Kelly, as a coach, you got the defensive guys from Missouri are pretty damn good. Bo Davis is back. You used the word, the term incremental progress. Kind of, where do you think LSU finishes out this year? You know that program very well.
I do. It's just look. Every other week, you want to fire your coach in this league. Honest to God, I mean, every other week you want to your coach is an idiot. Except except for Florida, which is pretty consistent idiot, Brendan. But every other week, your coach can be an idiot. How can you lose?
Single week
How can you lose? I mean, I love this. I love this league this year more than any year I've ever covered it.
It's the best.
It's because absolutely all hell breaks loose
and it's about to just totally get nuts.
I mean, it's not even there yet.
It's like 10 o'clock at a Diddy party right now. You have no idea.
Hey now,
That's gonna be my new clock, like end of the world clock. It's gonna be like that's gonna be like an NCAA football meltdown. It's gonna be like I'm gonna be like we're at 12 o'clock at a Diddy party. That's where
Well,
we're at.
Ron, you talk about the SEC. Every game you watch, it starts at 11 and it just goes on all night. And then you watched, like you say, Ryan Day and the guy for Ohio State, the quarterback, has no situational awareness of what's going on. Call a timeout. Do something to stop.
Buy a vowel.
Yeah. Buy a vowel for $50, Ron.
yeah, I mean, you see that a lot. The situational awareness problem of quarterbacks' live time. In games. That's one thing Ellis doesn't have. Garrett Nussmeier is a son of a coach.
Yeah.
And that little son of a gun is as cool as it comes. I mean, when you're fourth down,
I love him.
I mean, he just, the knock on him early, because as a freshman, he got into a game against Arkansas and was just, just firing it up and just firing all over the place. He got this reputation as a gunslinger, which is not a great thing. I mean, basically, it's good at the time, but eventually,
I don't know, like a Steve Spurrier, like.
Yeah, a gut, but it becomes a deal where you have to learn how to know when to be fearless and when to make good decisions. Well, he's become a really good decision maker. But one thing you can never shake is his confidence. In that game the other day, and I mean that's one reason Brian Kelly kicked the extra point in overtime, because he basically, one, his defense was playing really well, and two, he wanted to give Nussmeier a couple of more bullets to win the game, and he did. I mean, I think was almost stunned. LSU went up top the first play to win the game. I mean,
does he remind you offensive, like play calling wise? Does he remind you guys of Les Miles? I don't know. I feel I get a vibe from him. It's like a Les Miles vibe when I watch.
Les Miles didn't even know what year it was.
I know, but that's what made it so great, because his play calling was so damn random. It was like you can't defend it because that's not fair. Because that's like slop.
Les Miles
you can't call that.
He would have been down by a field goal that game and try to kick a drop kick to tie it. Okay,
but that shit would work. What a
setup question. We bring the grass eater back.
It would work.
These are two great Les Miles stories. One is this. One is the LSU Ole Miss game in Oxford when Les screwed the clock up.
Yeah,
okay?
golly.
And after the game, I'm talking to Houston Nutt. Houston Nutt goes, yeah, I mean, I just over there on the sideline. He goes, and I was getting ready to call a timeout. My sister goes, "What are you doing?
Oh my
God! You want the clock to run?" He goes, he goes, Les, he just confuses you so much. You screw up. He's so confused. You get
not fair.
Yeah. And then the
LSU genius of Les Miles.
Not fair.
And then the LSU Tennessee game in Baton Rouge, when LSU's center looked up at the game clock, and realized and snapped the ball.
Yeah.
And it was totally a fumble, and the game was over. But he snapped the ball because there's 1 second left. But he didn't realize that Tennessee had like 13 players on the field, and LSU got another play.
I hate Les Miles.
And so stuff like that. But it's just.
But that's what wins. Look, we're talking about Spurrier and everything else. I'm going to digress. But it's the guys that go like draw the play up in. I mean, I grew up playing football and all that stuff, but I grew up playing more neighborhood football than I did anything else. But those are the things that wins in the moment. Like, you go out here, you go run here. Okay, this works. So I'm open over here. Okay, great. And the wins in the moment. And nothing will ever compete.
What I always loved about Spurrier was this. If they just got the ball to turnover, say around midfield or around 44-yard line, everybody in the stadium knew he was going deep the first play. You just knew it, and he would still score.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody. I mean, all of us who watched it for years, like, oh, he's going deep the first play, and it's like, and there was score.
Who went for it in fourth down and like fourth in their own 12? Was it at the end of the first half? Was it Tennessee that did that, or was that LSU?
Probably
And everyone's like, why are they going for it right now?
That almost seems like an Ole Miss play. Dave,
I was watching that. Too much football. Like Ellis Johnson said, so much football.
So there's so much football.
We got to bring in Ken Capps. Sorry, I'm going to shut up.
Ken was at the Texas OU game over the weekend, and and I want to get your thoughts, Ron and Dave and everybody. This Monday morning blitz is a lot of fun. We cover all these games, and Ken, you were at the Texas OU game. Your thoughts about that, and then we're going to get Ron Higgins and Dave and I and Brendan all involved. And then they got to go home now and play Georgia. Texas is only a 3-point favorite. Kind of shed some light on it from the Metroplex.
That's right. Well, first of all, I wanted to compliment Dave on his squeaky chair because I actually saw a chair like that the other day on somebody.
You would do that. You'd come in here and you'd compliment him on his squeaky chair.
Well, because I was driving down. Because I was driving in our neighborhood a few weeks ago, and everybody puts out. It's called here in the Metroplex bulky trash, and where you put out the stuff you don't want anymore, and the big garbage trucks come out. And I saw a chair exactly like that, a really nice chair, and I almost picked it up and threw it in the back of my Wrangler because I said, man, that's too nice of a chair to throw away, and so I covet your chair. Okay, so don't let those guys make fun of your chair.
Let's be honest. There was no room next to the chairs for all the ex-wives that you had in the back of your truck from Texas. Hi.
So you take care of that chair, man.
I will.
But back to Texas OU. I knew it was going to be a good day with me and my buddy Joe. We've been to every one of those Texas OU games since 1978. And we always get there before the sun rises. And about 6:45 a.m. on Saturday, we're walking through the media.
So you wake up at like 4:30 in the morning.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right, Brendan.
What do you like at 4:30, Caps?
I'm one of those happy peppy morning people. That's why I love being on this show.
Yeah. Well, it is. And I mean, Ken,
you make coffee. I've seen you early in the morning at SEC Media Days. I believe you brought me a coffee.
I did.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Well, all right. Let's get this.
You're very nice guy, Ken.
Rapid fire going here. Ken, Texas OU, that was rough. And Ron, I saw Roman Harper, something pretty cool. I think it was on Twitter. He was debating with people, is the Iron Bowl's better than Texas OU? I mean,
it's weird.
This is what we're getting into in this game. So, Ken, now Texas has to go back and play Georgia, and then Ron covered LSU, Ole Miss. Dave's Army and Alabama are his schools. Stanford, when they are competitive, but this league this year, it just gets better. Here we're going into week 8. It just gets better every week.
Absolutely. And, I told you guys I got to give Frank Duffy credit too, because, he was bold enough to say that Texas would roll and Texas would cover. I was not that confident, quite frankly. And of course, Texas did start off slow. And if you guys recover, yeah, we're all still recovering here in the Metroplex. If you guys remember, I said that Texas would probably start off slow on offense and Quinn might throw an early interception. Well, what did he do? On the first play, he threw a pass. He threw an interception, okay? But then OU scored one field goal. Texas reeled off 34 straight points.
Yeah.
Thomas Hawkins, the true freshman from Oklahoma, was never a factor in this game. And, Texas defense and offense really came to play. But you're exactly right. To go straight back home now and play Oklahoma play Oklahoma. What's wrong with me this morning? To play Georgia as the consensus number one team in the country.
It's crazy. I don't know how we get through the weekend with all this drama. So.
I don't know either. And I tell you, Georgia's going to come in there loaded for bear. And so I just this is supposed to be the biggest game. The home game and you'll like this, Ron, the biggest home game for Texas since Burrows came in there with LSU a couple of years ago. When Texas supposedly turned off all the air conditioning in the locker rooms and everything. So maybe Texas will do the same thing for the Bulldogs. I don't know, but that place is going to be that people are going to start showing up on Wednesday. I don't think anybody's going to work in Austin this week. So
no one works in Austin anyways. It doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just everyone parties.
Ron, what about that? I mean, I'm
party town.
Curious what you think about it, what he just said.
I think it's probably it's definitely Texas' biggest home game this year. And you look down the stretch, they got Arkansas and Fayetteville could be a problem. I mean, that's a traditional rivalry that goes back to Southwest Conference days. A&M game at the end of the year suddenly probably has more meaning than it ever has had.
Yep.
Agreed.
It's just so much football left to be played. And again, this conference is just so incredibly competitive and goofy. I mean, again, Brian Kelly's the toast of the town right now. Sunday morning, he may not be.
Wow.
They play in Fayetteville. They play at A&M. In 2 weeks.
I feel like he's Diddy.
In 2 weeks, it could be, what's wrong with this team? I mean, look at Tennessee. What's wrong with this team? They play
Tennessee's good.
Oklahoma, and they play well, and they have open date. And what they do, they just get lost at open date. Arkansas drilled them, and then they had to work their tail off to beat Florida in Knoxville.
Welcome to the SEC. I mean,
exactly.
That Florida game every year is always going to be a tough game. Well, not every, but it's going to be a tough game for Tennessee every year.
It's like LSU Ole Miss.
That's why rivalry games matter. I mean, you throw everything out the window when it's Florida.
I tell you, the difference between Alabama and Auburn and Texas and Oklahoma is this. Now, can you correct me? Do people in Austin or Norman or in that state talk about Texas, Oklahoma football against each other 365 days a year? Is there a hate there?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But absolute hate every single day.
I hear the beginning beat of a war chant, and I get an anxiety attack, and I want to go crazy. I
worked in Mobile for a year and a half. I've never been in a place where it's a 365-day a year absolute hate jab. I mean, I remember when I first got to Mobile, and I went jogging down the bay, and I stopped and I sat on a bench, and this guy comes and sits next to me. This old guy looks at me. He goes, "Are you that new sport writing feller?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Are you Alabama? You Auburn?" That's what they think.
Yeah.
Right.
Dude, they do.
And there are distractions.
The whole state thinks like that.
Yeah.
You Alabama, you Auburn. It's like you got to prove your
Let me give you a good anecdote about yesterday. Going in, being around the fair before the game, and of course there's a lot of time between sunrise and 2:30 to be running around the fair. Of course, the greatest news was the first person me and my buddy Joe saw walking in was Paul Feinbaum. So we knew it was going to be a good day. Fellow Football Writers Association of American members. So we talked to him for a minute. But normally the Oklahoma fans are very much more. I don't know what the word is. I mean, I guess obnoxious is one word, but they're always in the face of the Texas fans before the game and cursing and F-bombing and everything. The Oklahoma fans yesterday pregame were very, very subdued, which I found after going to all these games, I found very, very unusual, as if they knew that something bad was going to happen to them yesterday. And going out of the game yesterday, they were also very, very, of course, a lot of them left early, but they were also very quiet. And you don't see that out of Oklahoma fans, because I will say this, Oklahoma fans spend a lot more time thinking about Texas than Texas thinking about Oklahoma. And of course, Oklahoma and A&M, no matter what game they're playing on TV, and guys, you know this watching all these games, every time they cut to the fans of those teams, they're always doing this. They're always doing this, when they're not playing Texas. And the Texas fans are always going, what the hell? Why?
Yeah.
But you're so right. I mean, they live in each other's heads 365 days a year. And I mean, and A&M getting back on the schedule. I mean, Texas has beaten A&M like 70 something times, and but you would still think, A&M still just grinds its teeth every day about Texas.
Well, Dave grew up in Mountain Brook, Alabama. I grew up from the womb pulling for Auburn. I remarried a Vol for life with an oldest daughter, Mallory, now graduated from Alabama. She's still a good person. And I mean, she is. But Ron, you're right. Nobody in America, in the world, has a rival committed 24/7 to their annihilation that Auburn does with Alabama, and vice versa. But Dave and I Dave's become a great friend. But I'm telling you, it is. And Ken says he'll never see. He goes, I never envision a day when Texas and OU fans are hanging out under the same tent together. Man, if I'm with Dave, he's welcome to anything I've got. But during that game, we ain't going to be anywhere near each other. It's just how it's got to be.
And there's no team in the state of Alabama called the Cowboys.
That's right.
I know the Cowboys suck this year, but McCarthy's probably going to lose his job. But that's I think the one difference.
Yeah. That's a great, but I love Ron's take. Spending time at the Mobile Press Register. And you may have been at Wenzel's Oyster House when that conversation was had.
It's just every day there. You go to a convenience. You could go to a convenience store in April, and it might be a guy like wearing an Auburn hat, and there's an Alabama guy in line behind, and there's this.
Is that where you are? Is Mobile? Is that where you are, Ron, right now? Is that where you live?
No, I live in Baton Rouge.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah,
I said you said Mobile. I just didn't.
Yeah. But I worked in Mobile, and it's like they'll just start saying snide stuff to a guy who doesn't even.
Yes.
It's just unreal. It's like
Mobile.
I mean, there's rivalries in the SEC. LSU Ole Miss is a rivalry, but it's not that everyday hate. That hate comes around usually once a year. When they play. But it's not like the hate.
I grew up. Everything that I knew was either I hated Georgia, or I hated you're like, oh, what are your two favorite teams? I was like, I love Florida Gators and anyone that plays Florida State. That was like the first words out of my mouth.
I mean,
Dave,
my dad was the LSU sports information director, so I went to every LSU game, and so I twice in 2 years saw Archie Manning bring back LSU, bring back Ole Miss for wins, and it's like, God, this guy, I hate this guy. And then, when I became a sports writer, I realized that Archie Manning is one of the finest human beings who ever walked the earth.
Yes. He is.
He is.
And you can see why his sons are the way they are.
But even he expects you to hate him. See,
No.
the great coaches expect, if you're on the opposing rivalry team and you're a fan of that, would they expect you to hate them? And in a sense of like they know the spirit of the SEC, the spirit of the game. They respect all of it.
Well,
Spurrier expects you to line up as the opposing team's fan base and go to the game. He always wanted to. That's what he was great about, was rivalry. He was like that. It was like the great wrestler. Where he would go out and really prime the crowd, get everyone, ready to go.
Well, Dave, hearing what he just said, and growing up in Memphis, and Ron and Ken, y'all know this. Anytime you go to a quarterback or touchdown club meeting and Archie Manning's there, it's pretty special. And you growing up where he grew up in Drew, Mississippi, down on 49, about 3 miles south of Parchman Prison, which is a horrible place. It's a cotton gins everywhere. It's a small town, but I don't know of a more loved player, Dave, from the Southeastern Conference than Archibald Manning. I mean, I just, my wife watched that 30 for 30 that John Goodman narrated and was in tears. I mean, we know about him having to find his father after he took his life. I mean, that is one of the best 30 for 30s I've ever seen. And all Archie's ever done is just keep a positive attitude, Dave.
No, it's the current generation forgets how iconic he was. You know, the hero at Ole Miss, and 18 miles an hour, and all of that, and all the games against superior opponents that he came back and won just basically by himself. And then his whole experience at the Saints, as bad as they were, he was such a good quarterback and just hung in there and just got his behind beaten year after year after year, and just kept going. The bags over the head, just everything. And people forget about him because Peyton and Eli came along, and now his grandson Arch. But you have to go back to the 1960s and 70s and what an icon he is, and how it never went to his head. I mean, whenever you run into him, he is just the ultimate gentleman. You guys have been around him more than I have, but I've been around him a couple times, and he just wants to learn more about you. And he's there's no conceit there. It's just what a great guy, and what a credit to the SEC he is.
I asked him one time, I met him, I just said hello to him at a quarterback club meeting in Memphis. I said, how did you do that? How did you raise sons to be like this? Because I got 3 kids. And he goes, you just got to love on them. Just keep loving on them and just spend so much time with them. But Ken, you're around Arch, and y'all know this, you and Ron as writers, there could be a lot of people thinking, oh, there's just controversy between Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. But by the way, when Quinn Ewers walked up that escalator or climbed up the escalator with Sark at media days, he had on that belt buckle and the cowboy boots. He stopped to take selfies with people. He'd go over there and do the horns, But that's a unique relationship. Expand on that.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I'm just so glad that because of Arch, that the legend and the goodness of Archie Manning has been able to be revived for new folks and for younger people, because Arch will bring up his grandpa every once in a while and about how much he reveres him. And on the flip side, I think is what has been great is, and of course you would not expect him to do this anyway, but Grandpa has not been meddling at all in what Sark is doing with his grandson. And, the Mannings are 100% behind how Arch is being managed by Sark at Texas. And, the media every week keeps trying to create a quarterback controversy down in Austin. And there's just not one. And they so want to say Arch is going to transfer. Arch is going to do this. Arch is not happy. No. And I will admit that I think there were some fans on Saturday that were hoping that midway through the fourth quarter, after Texas scored that last touchdown, scored by Ewers, by the way, that Arch might be able to come in those last 5 or 6 minutes and play. And of course, if that had happened, the place would have gone nuts. But as it happened, Oklahoma got the ball back and just basically ran out the clock. And so it didn't happen. Okay, it didn't happen. Next year, this team, the Texas team, is going to be Arch's team because Ewers is going to go to the NFL. There's not a question about it. And so I've just been so impressed. And also with Cooper, Dad Cooper, there's a great picture on the internet today. I guess Cooper, Arch's dad, went out and bought a big cowboy hat at the state fair yesterday. It's about 3 times the size of his head. I don't know if y'all have seen it, but it's hilarious. And he's sitting there in the stands, and he's been great. He's been great with the Texas staff too. And I mean, that whole family is just pure class. They know football. They know not to get in the chili of the coaches, as we like to say down here in Texas. And I just think the whole thing's been managed great. And again, I give Frank Duffy the credit. He said that Manning is going to win the Heisman down here at Texas, and I 100% now believe him.
Well,
Archie,
Ryan, yeah.
Archie was always been like that with all his kids. They made all their own decisions for college. He never interfered. And one of Peyton's favorite stories is the time that Cutcliffe came over for a home visit when they were recruiting. And Cut brought some old Tennessee game film, and they're going over it, and they're watching it, and Peyton says, I look over at Dad in his easy chair, and he's leaned back, and he's got his eyes closed. He's sleeping.
Yeah.
And that's Archie. Archie always made it a point.
That's my dad.
That I'm not going to get in my kid's business. The coach's coach. I mean, he reamed Peyton out one time in high school. Peyton had talked back to the high school basketball coach and told him he was a blah blah blah. And Peyton and Archie found out, and he chewed Peyton's tail. He made him go apologize, and he made
That's buddy.
Archie. He said, "I'm always there if they have a question, but I'm never going to give them any advice unless they ask me."
Yeah.
And it's worked wonderfully. Ole Miss fans were just nasty to Archie Manning for years after Peyton decided to go to Tennessee. And look, I remember going down and doing a story on Peyton before he signed. And it was hilarious. I talked to everybody around him. Where do you think he's going to go? Where do you think he's going to go?
Yeah.
Everybody and nobody said Tennessee, but little Eli Manning. Little Eli Manning told me he's going to go to Tennessee. I said, why? He goes, well, they got the best receivers. That's where he's going. It's a great family. All of them have been great. All of them have different personalities. Cooper's the comedian. He always has been. Cooper's a guy who would like going, once he had spinal stenosis, and once his football career ended, he became Peyton's biggest cheerleader. Well, a lot of times he'd go to Peyton's games, but he'd be out the night before in a bar, and somebody would look at him and go, they think he was, for some reason they thought he looked like a Manning. They go, what are you doing? You got a game tomorrow here. Aren't you playing tomorrow? And he'd act like he was paid. He goes, yeah, but I like to go out drinking the night before. It gets me loose for a game. I play better that way. It's Peyton's the real
old school,
the old school over prepared guy. I mean, I'm going to prepare for anything, everything, just like he is on this telecast. A little bit anal, but he makes fun of being anal. And Eli was kind of like, as Archie says, easy Eli. Just kind of like, you never knew what Eli was, just like if he was ready for a game or not, or just like, yeah, I'll play. Eli's like kind of guy like, what do you do? Well, I play football. I'm a quarterback.
Yeah.
And the center of all this is his wife Olivia, the homecoming queen, who's just absolute jewel. So, if you want a great football family with a great football dad who understands, I don't coach coaches. I watch my sons, and the mother who supports. That's that family. And if you watched the Peyton telecast last Monday night. With Archie in the fourth quarter doing this stuff, it was some of the funniest stuff there all year, and it kind of showed that the relationship they have, they've always had, and it's funny now that both players retired and Dad's still going. I can't say good. I mean, I can't. Growing up, Archie Manning was like the enemy, and then it took me about 25 seconds of talking to him as a professional to realize I really like this guy. And
absolutely.
Over the years, it's just gotten more and more and more. And so I'm happy for Arch Manning. He was raised the right way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's no doubt in my mind he wasn't going to transfer. That's not what Mannings do. But both Peyton and Eli stuck it out to the senior years at Tennessee. Peyton could have left after his junior, made a ton of money, but he didn't. Yeah. But you know why? Because they were raised to love college football. They love college football, and I think
I love him forever. He brought it home for my Broncos. So
and I feel Arch is going to be the same way. Would Arch leave early if he got good enough? he probably have the opportunity, but what he probably talked to both of his uncles and say, "Why'd you stay?"
Wow.
What's going on with Arthur Manning doesn't surprise me at all.
Let's talk more about how they're gonna go fire everyone at Alabama. That's not fun. Come on, guys. I don't care about him anymore. No one cares anymore.
Yeah,
great.
look,
He's great.
the thing
The
is,
Peyton Mannings are great. Everyone loves them. Great. All right, so
we're gonna wrap up.
Is gonna be fired, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what's so crazy is everybody.
Let's talk about that.
Everybody wants to have all this about the other distractions, but the Mannings, you get down to it, they just love college football, we love it because enjoy every player that leaves after 3 years that's ever interviewed. They talk about, I wish I could have stayed all 4 years and enjoyed college when they're honest with themselves. But hey, Ken Capps, Football Writers Association of America, Ron Higgins, Shreveport Bossier Journal.
Also, they're following the Terry Bradshaw path. Like all those guys, Bradshaw paved the way on how to do this and how to make it cool and how to transition into movies and how to be a cool guy and have your own show and all that stuff. Bradshaw was the OG model for player transition into media. Mega superstar making $25 billion a year doing everything. He was the OG guy.
And you got to think about why we love college football. Ron, your dad, sports information director. That's what I still call them, not media relations directors. All they do is tell you, no, can't do this. Hey, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and do what you can to help other people. We are the most blessed people in the greatest country in the history of the world. Happy Columbus Day. The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria.
Santa Maria.
Man.
I remember that from history, man.
Hey, Columbus is not a good dude, right?
That's a Spanish wishbone. That's a Spanish wishbone.
Spanish wishbone.
What do you eat on Columbus Day?
What do you eat on Columbus Day? We're going to have a parade. Hey, Ron, thank you so much. And Dave Tompkins, Coach Ellis Johnson,
what do they call
Brendan
those
Martin.
in New Orleans?
Great stuff. We will see y'all tomorrow.
Got
another great lineup. Thank you.
What do they call those things? All right, goodbye.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.